And you know for a fact that you're not supposed to come into a court like this and testify about what somebody might or may have done. Isn't that right?
I was answering the questions that were asked.
You would have never, have you ever been in court before as a prosecutor?
I have.
So you know for a fact that that is not proper, don't you?
This is not a criminal trial.
Right. It's not proper to go into a court and testify on live stream and to jurors about something that someone might have done. That's incredibly misleading, incredibly prejudicial, and wrong, isn't it?
Objection, Your Honor, to asked and answers mischaracterizes the evidence as presented by the witness.
Overruled.
I was asked to identify the possible avenues of investigation that I outlined in the memo to the district attorney.
Possible, maybe, potentially. We don't know, right? You don't know at all, do you?
I don't understand that question.
You were just sitting up there and making a bunch of silly guesses, weren't you?
I would not agree with that.
And you just testified in this historic impeachment proceeding in response to the House's questions about all of the potentials or the maybes or the possibilities, right?
I was talking about the memo that I wrote for the district attorney outlining the avenues of investigation had the feds not waved us off and we had moved forward.
The feds waved you off, you say?
Yes.
Y'all were excited about this. We got a chance to get Ken Paxton, isn't that true?
That's not accurate.
Let's look at Eric, AG Exhibit 170, Brickman 202. You tell me if this is right. It's in evidence. Bring that right there on 10/27/2020, Eric. Right there, Eric. Let me just read this so we'll understand what y'all really were up to. My phone conference with Margaret Moore and her team went well today. They are excited about pursuing this investigation and will coordinate their efforts with the U.S. Attorney Office so that both pursuits complement each other. They obviously want to move quickly as they have time constraints. They are not going to wait on the feds. Did I read that right?
You read it correctly, yes.
Mm-hmm. So the DA's office of Travis County, Margaret Moore, she Democrat, Republican?
She's a Democrat.
Okay, so the elected Democrat district attorney of Travis County was excited. She had a chance to go after Ken Paxton for just an entire litany of things, according to your little memo, right?
I disagree with the description of excited.
And you're telling me that the feds waved her off. That's what you're telling me?
Correct.
The feds under whom? Who was in charge of the feds?
At that time, I believe it was still Attorney General Barr.
Okay, who was the president at that point in time?
Donald Trump.
Oh, think about that for a minute. You're telling me that this elected Democrat, who you claim the maybes, the possibilities, the potential, all kinds of crimes, that she, as an elected Democrat, decided stand down. Donald Trump says stand down. You think that we really believe that foolishness? Do you think we believe that?
I have no idea what
Nobody believes that. And you don't believe it either.
Your Honor,
do
I
you?
object, sir, thank you, to the form of the question and offering an opinion that he is not entitled to offer in testimony.
Sustain. You don't believe that either, do you?
I don't even know what you're saying right now. What was your question?
Now, you had told us that potentially, possibly, maybe abuse of official capacity, right?
Correct.
Potential, maybe, who knows? Acceptance of gift to a public servant?
Correct.
No clue if that was true or not, was there? You had no clue, did you?
Can I explain the purpose of the memo?
I'm asking you whether you had any clue that any of those things were true.
Based upon the information provided by the three witnesses that we had interviewed, yes, it appeared that it was true.
You thought it was true, so you had probable cause to make an arrest, and that's what you did, right?
No, a preliminary investigation is to determine whether or not to move forward with an investigation. That was the stage we were at.
Probable cause means you have enough for an arrest, right?
Probable cause would give rise to justification for an arrest.
You didn't have justification for an arrest, did you?
We were at the point of making a determination of whether to move forward with an investigation.
There was no indictment, right?
Correct.
There was no arrest, right?
Correct.
And yet, you came here in front of all these fine people and told us a bunch of maybes. Isn't that right?
I came here and answered questions about the memo.
And looking at this litany that the lawyer wanted to put into evidence, one of those was possibly, maybe, who knows, engaging in organized criminal activity, right?
That is something I outlined in the memo.
That sounds bad, doesn't it?
It's an offense under the penal code.
That sounds like there's something really going on bad at the AG's office, right?
That is your characterization of that.
That's something you'd never want to be a part of, right?
I don't understand your question.
I'm just trying to figure out. I mean, if that's what's going on at the AG's office, if you really believe that, you certainly would never want to be a part of it, right?
I'm not an employee of the Attorney General's office.
I mean, my point is, you would never engage in such activity, would you? This maybe activity you talked about?
The activity that was being alleged on the part of Mr. Paxton?
You would never engage in any of these so-called potential crimes yourself, would you?
Correct. I would not.
You would never want to be a part of anything like that, would you?
That is correct.
You wouldn't want to be associated with something like that, would you?
That is correct.
You have dedicated your life, you claim, to the rule of law, right?
Correct.
And so there is no way you would ever want to be associated or affiliated with that kind of criminal conduct. Isn't that right?
I'm not following your line of questioning. You're talking about the conduct described in the memo about Mr. Paxton after the interview of the 3 witnesses?
I'm talking about organized criminal activity. You'd never want to be a part of that.
Correct.
I mean, if you really believe that, you certainly wouldn't want to be a part of it, right?
Correct.
You applied for a job at the AG's office, didn't you?
I did.
Let's make sure we let that sink in. You applied for a job after this silly memo you wrote, didn't you?
Yes.
Let it sink in. You wrote this silly memo where you talked about potential violations of law, and months later, you applied to work at the AG's office, didn't you?
That is correct.
And you know what the kicker is? Who wrote your letter of recommendation?
Margaret Moore. She wrote a general letter of recommendation that I could use with any employer. It was not specific for that job.
She wrote you a letter of recommendation. This whole thing should be dismissed. Don't you agree?
No.
Yeah.